That's the thing about Oda as an author as well. He doesn't usually lie to the audience through characters. Like, their words are usually his words as well.
Yeah, it's his way of telling us things.
What about the Kaido silhouette we got?
Oh, that was a fucking lie.
Hello and welcome to the Blue Banana Podcast, where we are increasingly becoming the One Piece podcast because we had a stroke of genius today and decided that we wanted to discuss One Piece because we haven't discussed it enough recently.
Do you guys think that we have a problem?
Yeah, I think it's called an addiction.
Hi, my name's Liam.
Are we perhaps a bit too addicted to One Piece that the three of us have come together from our completely separate jobs that are all focused on One Piece, and we come together once a week to hang out and we're like, what do you want to talk about? One Piece?
One Piece.
You want to talk about One Piece? Fucking love One Piece.
Oh, you love One Piece?
Did you say One Piece?
Insane. We did say though that we're probably like after this streak of One Piece, just to not trap you guys into the false illusion that this is now turning into the One Piece podcast. We're gonna go on a strict fast after this. So feast today,
Fast.
And then starve.
feast today on One Piece, and then
It's like the
starve.
last meal before a diet, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Faust.
Faust. All right, I've got to read up.
That sounds like something that I didn't do at uni.
We were kind of thinking whether to do a third round of live action, but then I think this feels like it's been last year that it's come out at this point. I feel like we actually, like, the biggest news around it has been kind of the confirmation of the second season, and then the entire, like, sixth season. They're trying to get 6 seasons approved, and they're planning 12 or something.
They've said they have enough material for 12.
Yeah. But I think we covered, like, pretty much that.
Just before it was confirmed.
Yeah, in the last podcast.
Yeah, nothing new has happened since then. It's just kind of on simmer. We're putting live action on simmer.
So instead, we were thinking, why not discuss the kind of not as good version of One Piece as a live action?
Are you talking about the comic? Like the black and white drawings?
Is it manga?
From that blind author?
That gave me really bad goosebumps right
In high school, I originally called it manga, but everyone around me in high school who read it said
Manga?
it's manga.
Manga.
Because that would be like the Australian way to say it. People laughed at me because I said manga. And so for the longest time, I also said manga, like an uncultured swine, because I wanted to fit in.
G'day, it's gonna be your bogan intro to manga.
It's a real weird thing in English because it's both A's. It's A in the middle and A at the end. So why would it be manga? Wouldn't it be then manga?
Manga?
Manga, yeah.
I mean, that also works in Australian. English is a stupid language because if you look at the words like height and weight, you'll find that letters, like there's no correlation. They can just mean whatever we say it means at any given time.
In fact, there's entire YouTube channels I've discovered dedicated to how phonetically inconsistent English is.
Just English?
No, it's like, I think French, and like in general, it's like people doing like language stuff.
Because I follow a few French ones now. And recently I saw a YouTube short of counting to 100 in different languages. And in
'cause
French, it's like
60 times
68,
4.
69,
Yeah.
6010, 6011, 6012, 420s. 420s and 1, 420s and... Oh, French, come on. Come on, mates.
So yeah, we're talking about manga, the least fun version of One Piece, as we've, I think, established now over the course of the last 2 podcasts.
Not even any voice
Yeah, the
acting.
worst.
Where's the CGI? Not enough filler in my One Piece manga, I'll be honest. But like, yeah, we actually wanted to discuss the entire Egghead Island arc. So this is going to be a little bit spoiler heavy in case you are in any way or form not caught up to One Piece in the manga. This will be your warning to watch older episodes of the Blue Banana podcast and come back next week for German literature episode. But yeah, I mean, the arc is slowly wrapping up, I would assume. I mean, you can never know with One Piece, but it seems like the next few chapters will slowly wrap it up. And I kind of wanted to, like, actually genuinely, because I don't think I've talked to either of you actually about the current arc at all.
No, it's like the one thing we avoid because it's what our jobs focus on. So we get together and talk about other things.
The first thing I want to talk to you guys about before we even get into like evaluations and how the entire arc is for you guys. In general, were you surprised that the arc once again lasted as long so far as it has, because we talked about it recently, the entire, One Piece is trying to wrap up and we're trying to get to the end, and then we had just like this super random arc no one was actually expecting in the first place happening. And now it's not, I mean, it's basically been confirmed.
All of the predictions were like Elbaf is next.
And Elbaf does seem to be guaranteed,
it seems
but
like it's going to be next.
I think it's guaranteed that we'll go there.
I think it's guaranteed that they'll try to go there at the very least. That's the intention now.
Has that surprised you at all? Like that we're doing like these detours again?
Not really. I kind of expected something like Zo to happen, this sort of unexpected short burst adventure. Although I think the increased amount of break time has made the arc feel like it's going on a lot longer than it actually has.
That's very true. Because it's been almost a year.
I think it's been pretty much just on a year, maybe.
I think so too, that this arc has lasted, but then I suppose we did have a few breaks in between, and we were at that sort of like bi-weekly chapter release for a while as well.
And we also had a big 1 month break as well for Oda's surgery.
Last chapter of Wano was 1057, so it's like 45 chapters at this point.
That is a year for considering all the breaks.
I don't know, like One Piece only publishes like 30-something chapters a year.
Oh, so it's already double the length of Zo, actually. Okay, if you had to guess, okay, now it's stupid because I said roughly. How many chapters do you think Zo was?
So is Zo about maybe
20
like 25 chapters? Maybe 24?
Yeah, 23.
23
chapters. Which, in the grand scheme of things now, sandwiched between Whole Cake... no, it was after Whole Cake Island. I was about to say sandwiched between Whole Cake Island and Wano, because that would have like felt minute. That's like Zoro getting out of the well in the live action type of
pacing.
But it was between Dressrosa. Those were also mammoth arcs.
Was Dressrosa shorter or longer than Whole Cake Island?
It was about 20 chapters longer, I think. Whole Cake Island is somewhere in the 80s. Dressrosa is like 114 or something. And maybe about 10 or something chapters longer.
Whole Cake Island was 78. Okay.
But I guess also
close.
Egghead, we've spent some time away from Egghead as well. There was a series of like, what was it, 8 chapters when we weren't at Egghead and we were looking
lots
at
of Shanks,
the
lots of
Reverie
Garp,
and
lots of Reverie, yeah.
Yeah.
The Reverie arc has mostly taken place in Egghead Island.
That's very true.
Got some O'Hara flashbacks there.
But those happened like within Egghead, right? Like it was like Shaka explaining what happened like during like Egghead, whereas like the Reverie like actually took us out of the island.
You mean we physically left? Yeah.
Yeah, like we hadn't seen the Straw Hats for like 2 months.
Or like 2 chapters. I don't know how many chapters it actually was, but
it was a long time. It was almost 3 months, I think, that the Straw Hats were absent from One Piece.
And I have to say, I think it's a real strength of One Piece that you cannot focus on the main characters for that long, and the manga still feels just so top notch. Like every week I was still eating it up.
Potentially controversial opinion. I think those chapters were much more exciting than anything that happened on Egghead. When we were seeing like Garp invade Hachinosu and all of the Shanks stuff.
I think it's been like a real highlight in general. Like for Egghead itself, it's kind of this interesting mishmash of, because it was interluded with like actual action and like quite serious stuff happening. But then Egghead kind of, Oda clearly wanted to have some fun with like quirky characters and so on and so forth. I thought it was really like the entire world building and kind of how the arc has changed our entire perspective on One Piece has been insanely cool. And I want to get into the entire like potentially like kind of post-apocalyptic implications that it has for the One Piece world. If I had like one thing to nitpick with the entire arc, it would have been the entire traitor situation, because I felt like that felt incredibly disappointing in the way it was built up and then kind of very quickly resolved.
Disappointing in the build-up or the resolution, or both?
In the resolution, I would say. Because I felt like in the build-up, it felt exciting to kind of think about who it
was very exciting.
Like, was it someone even within the Straw Hats?
But did you just say it could be one of the Straw Hats?
No, it was like, we didn't know, so it was like, could have been anyone.
Did you just accuse the crew of potentially being one of the traitors? What, like if Usopp had been a clone the entire time or something? Or
like Robin's entire story arc at Enies Lobby was just meant nothing, and she was a spy from Arabasta all along.
And then during the time skip, they were like, you need to look less menacing. You need to look more harmless. Put yourself in the background.
Don't fight. Don't have any fight fights.
Yeah, I felt like the entire resolution to it was just for the amount of buildup that we got to the reveal. I felt like the actual execution of the reveal was a little bit anticlimactic to me.
It is. But I would say that this is just a problem with mysteries. The best part about mysteries is when you don't know. As soon as you know, it's kind of all downhill from there. There are very few mysteries where like the killer is being revealed, and that's been like the hard climax to me.
But I feel like there's still like a way to resolve a mystery where it's like, oh no way, it was that person for that reason.
I think York was the most unexpected person.
I said it as a joke. I once said like it was probably York as a joke, and I was like, nah, but really, but nah, but maybe, and then it ended up being York. But also, I think that panel made up for it.
Wait, like York with the gun?
Both of them.
Doing
So
the
the one
squat?
where we see, that one was also like I found her very menacing in that. But also the panel, sort of like almost right after when we see the Straw Hats have tied her up, which is talking to the Gorosei, and then you've got Zoro, like you've got Usopp there. That was such a killer panel. I quite liked how that all wrapped up, although I was expecting that to be drawn out a little bit longer.
Question. I've been thinking about this recently. Do you think that's going to be an invitation for the anime to do like half a year of filler? Just covering what happened that night on Egghead Island that Oda skipped?
Hopefully they should. I mean, again, very much rooting for more good filler, especially if it's like semi-canon, because that gives the anime actually an excuse to make nicely paced episodes.
I would genuinely watch the anime every week if they did something like that, because I think it would be an interesting idea. But I also really love the idea of just cutting away from the Straw Hats, cutting back. They've done their classic adventure. We all knew they were going to win. It's over now. Shenanigan reoccurred. Let's move on.
They did do it quite nicely, honestly, with Yasuie and the entire Smile Fruit thing in the anime. I'm not watching every episode at the moment, but I did watch that, and they kind of like fleshed that out quite nicely and made it a lot more dramatic than it was in the original manga, where it was only like a page or two going into how Toko is eating like the Smile Fruit, and then Yasu eats it too. Like they made that really nicely, and I'm like, do more of that instead of having these like slow panning shots between the sumo ringer fight again.
I think they did a pretty good job with Kaido's backstory as well, or at least a better job than the manga did, where it felt like a couple of panels and then we're done.
That panel where we see the Straw Hats kind of having captured York, do you guys feel like there might be, again, not a traitor within the Straw Hats, but do you feel like there might be an imposter?
A second imposter? A double twist?
If we have a second imposter, it's going to be Kizaru, who turns coat and goes, I'm actually going to save Vegapunk after all.
Oh, want to get into that too. Like, so interesting. I feel like in general, like, I want to hear your take on that too, because this is something I said a while ago. I think it might have been like a video like 2 or 3 years ago even, where I was kind of saying, people always taking it for granted that Luffy will fight Akainu and that Akainu will be one of the big baddies, but I've always kind of felt that Oda is kind of making most of the admirals, maybe with the exception of Green Bull, like he's kind of giving them a somewhat like redeemable quality almost, even Akainu, where he's like so anti like the Celestial Dragons and doesn't really like the corruption within the government itself. So, and especially in recent chapters, I found it really interesting with Kizaru, who clearly is uncomfortable executing his mission there and like fighting against people he clearly cares for.
I mean, very mildly uncomfortable.
That's a very interesting way you put it. Do you think he's very uncomfortable? Because I found him very hard to read. He's just like, he's almost flippant about it. He's just like, look, this isn't pleasurable.
I read him as quite sociopathic. Oh, guys, I really don't want to do this, but also bang, 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 dead, 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 kick Bonnie.
I feel like you might be right. I just interpreted it really differently. Like, no, I kind of read it more as him being really angry and kind of like having like this suppressed rage almost, where he kind of stopped using his regular speaking patterns even for a while, and he was like, why the fuck do I need to do this?
That was pointed out. He had like got serious for a bit when Luffy first attacked him.
Yeah, usually he has like this kind of dragged out kind of way of speaking, and then he didn't have that at all. He was like, why couldn't you, like, Sentomaru, why couldn't you like just, you know, stay out of this kind of vibe? So I personally had and especially spliced in with all the flashbacks we've gotten for him kind of spending time with Vegapunk, with Sentomaru, and so on and so forth. I personally felt like that was Oda hinting at him being extremely unhappy and kind of like angry about having to go against people that he kind of cares for.
Such very strong words for such a very non-emotive man.
I think it's been hard to read. I wouldn't quite go as far as Liam has said and say that he's almost sociopathic and it's like he doesn't care at all. The feeling that I always get from Kizaru is sort of just like, well, I got a mission, I gotta do it. That's
But
sort of
he
like
also
end
does
of
it
story.
quite
Not really, though,
happily.
because he was so eager to go to Wano, though, right? He was super proactive in that sense.
As in, like, he wanted to go to Wano because he knew what was going on at Egghead. He was like, don't send me to Egghead, I'd rather go to Wano.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying because, again, before Wano, I would have also seen him as this kind of like, if I have to, I'm just gonna go wherever they send me.
He's an admiral. He got up there by taking a little bit of initiative. I think he's just very overly confident in his abilities. So he hears about a problem that's happening and he goes, want me to go over to Wano, take a shit on Kaido and come back? Or, no, you good? You good? All right, sure.
I'm
Let's do
curious. So again, this is maybe, and again, maybe I'm like misreading this or like reading it with my biased glasses on. But yeah, I kind of read that scene as like, oh, Kizaru being kind of unhappy he has to go against like his former friend.
I mean, I would agree that he's not happy with it. He does definitely say, like, do you think this is a happy thing for me? Like, I don't want to do this
He
either.
says that, but then he smiles all the time while saying it.
Maybe it's a sad grin. Like a bittersweet.
A grimace.
And with Sentomaru as well, I did feel like a hint of pain.
There was respect for Sentomaru, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. But then he's like, ha ha ha, I'm stronger anyway.
Yeah, I'll kill you anyways.
To me, Kizaru just seems like he's having a very pleasant day out.
Really? Okay, interesting. Not the vibe I've gotten.
But people have also pointed out that, he obviously hasn't killed Sentomaru. And one is obviously the fact that Oda just doesn't kill his characters, which is not as necessarily true anymore.
Yeah, I was about to
These
say.
days.
He has done quite a few killings lately.
Or are they dead? Paka.
Well, after the whole, fluff around that we had with Mjosgard, whether he's really dead or not after the different translations.
Oh yeah, that was awful. That was really dropping the ball.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm like, why put in those kind of like a little bit touchy-feely flashbacks with Kizaru and Sentomaru if not to kind of drive home the point?
It's interesting that you see that as touching for Kizaru. I see it as touching for Sentomaru and Stella, and Kizaru is also there.
I felt the same, that it didn't go into Kizaru's relationship with Vegapunk
Yeah.
at all, because Kizaru was just there. We don't know how they met. We don't know how he became involved. It was sort of like how they met Sentomaru. But I did see the relationship between Sentomaru and Kizaru, because it's like Kizaru was literally fighting a kid that he's known for ages.
If he actually has that positive relation with Vegapunk, because Vegapunk very clearly like experimented on him to create the lasers, right? So I'm not sure how much like actual friendship or like camaraderie is between those two, but I feel like Sentomaru and Kizaru, I felt like that was kind of hinted at, that it's kind of both sides are being hurt by this. Sentomaru is just ended up like kind of abandoning his marine duties for Vegapunk, while Kizaru is deciding to follow his marine duties and go against Vegapunk.
Yeah, no, exactly, because one has feelings and is doing what's right, and the other one's doing what he's told because it's his job and he doesn't feel as hard.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I guess I have like a different like perspective, or like
You have such a fascinating perspective on One Piece. I would love it if we could just switch brains after reading a chapter, because I feel like I would read something completely different.
It was the same with Akainu. I felt like it was the same chapter with Kuma climbing there, and then you have Akainu being like, "Oh, you're
That
like
was bizarre.
You're just a slave, like to the system, kind of." And he's like, "Are you talking about yourself or?"
Yeah,
This
that
is,
was a
he was
bizarre
projecting.
chapter.
Sakazuki was projecting.
Yeah.
And he's jelly. He's jelly that Kuma has some free will and he's doing stuff, and he's not. He's stuck in an
He let him
office.
go also. I mean, like, don't tell me that he couldn't, like, completely... I mean, I guess there is the Celestial Dragons there, but, like, still.
Maybe. There's a question of if you can actually catch Kuma once he repels, because it's almost instantaneous he's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, he has one of the best abilities in One Piece. That's so broken. It's insanely broken, yeah. But yeah, like, in general, like, again, I'm not saying, like, this is definitely gonna happen, but it's just, like, something interesting I've been, like, thinking about for, like, 2 or 3 years now, where I'm like, maybe the Admirals don't end up being like the big baddies that need to be defeated at the end, but maybe like they also, because it's been hinted at so much that parts of the Marines don't really like being under the world government, similar to how the Marines are kind of portrayed as, yeah, as a force they're good, but they're kind of corrupted by the upper influence of the world government and the world nobles.
Yeah, or split into two factions, which is how I usually see them.
But then Akainu is an interesting case if you see it that way, right? Because usually you would say Akainu is part of the bad faction where he just sees things as absolute justice. Whereas now, and I guess as of late, you do more read Akainu's character as, yes, he believes in absolute justice, but that doesn't necessarily mean the world government or following the Gorosei.
No, definitely not. He believes in his own justice, and he's getting very frustrated.
They condemned him to desk duty, so he had like time to actually think about, oh man, paperwork again.
What have I been doing with my life? Absolute what?
But even with Akainu, you can even say like, yeah, like obviously his sense of justice is like twisted and not like kind of perverted, but nonetheless, like he also like while he has this kind of perverted idea that all pirates are evil and need to be punished, he very clearly is aware of the corruption and the injustice in being controlled by the world government, and he detests that as well, right? Because it doesn't work, it doesn't fit into his like sense of justice either. Like neither does pirates or the government.
Feels like he'll eventually try and do a coup on the world government.
But then it must have been a recent change, because scholars at Ohara, they weren't pirates.
It's, when he became a fleet admiral and realized that, shit's
he has
whack.
to do
My life is
anything that the
meaningless.
Gorosei say, yeah.
He doesn't actually get to do anything. That's why Sengoku was laughing at him.
Yeah, he literally has no choice. He's just doing paperwork the entire day and has like no influence of what's happening. Yeah.
He's the middleman. The elders make all the decisions, and then they point at Sakazuki and go, you make it happen.
Which always makes me wonder, what is the point of Kong anyways in like that entire ranking? It's like
A nice cushy retire job.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. I think it's just a retirement role, you know? Just the legacy creature.
Although Kong also has some jurisdiction over Cypherpole as well.
yeah.
That's true.
So interesting, but then you would think that the Gorosei communicate to Kong, and then Kong communicates that onto Akainu. Speaking of that kind of hierarchy in the world governments, with the Holy Knights revealed, which was like such a fun. I love we're moving into the end of One Piece, and instead of answering stuff, we're just like throwing more new things into it.
Yeah. A whole new faction.
Where do you guys rank them? Do you rank them above or below the Gorosei?
I rank them above St. Mostgard for sure. I think that's the
What
only
makes you
empirical
think
thing we have. Maybe like the private police of the elders / world nobles as a whole.
I did see someone point out that Akainu, before we knew about the Holy Knights, when he had that audience with the Gorosei, he said the people above you, he mentioned that to the Gorosei, which I thought was interesting, because obviously he doesn't mean Imu, because he doesn't know about Imu, presumably.
The way that I thought about it was like, if we have a government and we've got usually, I don't know about other countries, but in Australia we have like 3 arms. So we've got the legislature, we've got the executive, and the judiciary. I was thinking that maybe if the elders are the legislature, then the Holy Knights would be the judiciary.
That
I think it's more like he's sort of being
questioning, like,
sarcastic.
how did they come higher than you?
Yeah,
You
again,
are the
again,
highest.
again. There, I think I would need the Japanese original to see if he actually like uses a plural there or just doesn't mention anyone specific.
I mean, that's also not the official translation, I imagine.
The Holy Knights, I guess, are the police of the specifically for the world nobles, because you can't use Cypherpole against world nobles.
And the judges.
And the judges as well, yes. Yeah, no, I like Sophie's idea. They're the judicial branch.
I wonder, could they execute one of the Gorosei? That was the question.
That's a good question.
Can we kill the Gorosei? So I've been thinking about this, and I've been thinking about this since the end of Wano, because do you remember that chapter where it basically suggested that the Gorosei that were around, I don't know, centuries ago are different from the Gorosei that are around now?
Yeah, when they were saying something like the world government has been trying to recover the fruit.
Though, to be fair, from the Japanese, or like as I read the Japanese chapter, that doesn't say much, because like in Japanese, you kind of use your own name or your own like the title of your company or something when you talk about yourself. Kind of, it's not uncommon to say like, oh, Manu likes this a lot when I'm like saying something or something. So just them saying the world government might just be self-referential in that sense.
Ah, okay. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't always the world government, or they weren't always the Gorosei.
It could.
Because I've always wondered, does that mean that the Gorosei are not eternal, like we've been thinking? Like, are they also from 800 years ago?
The perpetual youth elders theory, I think, has definitely lost quite a bit of steam, because it feels like they don't know quite as much as maybe they should. Like, there are big gaps in their knowledge of the last couple of 100 years, so they sort of seem more now like the latest batch of geriatrics to do the bidding of Imu.
Did we talk about this at all? The three of us, kind of the entire like past, like the One Piece world used to be modern and high tech, and then something like the big like the Void Century happened, and then it was kind of thrown back into the Stone Age.
Sounds like a familiar discussion. Yeah,
I think
I feel like we talked about this, right?
Yeah, I think it was when the Iron Giant was revealed.
Like this still blows my mind. Like I had that wish before that we would kind of get some sort of reveal like that the One Piece world used to be like something completely different, and then something happened that made it as insane as it is. And it's kind of like, I'm really happy that it turned out to be that way. Even though of course we don't know the actual ones. Like I think before this was dropped, the comparison I once made was with the Wheel of Time series. In case you guys are familiar with that, where basically it's never explicitly mentioned. So it's this fantasy world, right? And there's like this magic system, and it's kind of like somewhere between Middle Ages and like Renaissance times. Like there's still swords and then so on and so horses. Some people are like kind of meddling around with like some early phases of technology, like a steam engine or something. But like what's hinted at throughout the entire thing is the Wheel of Time turns, and then like kind of like everything happens in like this circular thing, and then the world breaks again, and so on and so forth. And throughout the stories, it's never explicitly stated, but it's kind of hinted at that the world, where this fantasy world actually used to be our actual world, this super advanced society that kind of discovered something they shouldn't have, and then kind of destroyed the world through that, and threw everything back into kind of the Stone Ages that way. I don't know, like I'm not saying that the One Piece world was actually our world, but it definitely does sound like there was like advanced technology going around.
At least on one kingdom, yes.
The fact that everything that Vegapunk has created is basically a recreation. I mean, we don't know how modest he is in that sense, but at least he makes it sound like he has built lesser versions of what used to be reality.
No, he still hasn't anywhere near caught up to what used to exist.
And we don't know if that's just him being kind of modest about it or not, but
I mean, you'd imagine that he's saying the truth,
a very
right?
honest
Because like Oda wouldn't really put that in the chapters if it wasn't relevant or if it wasn't true.
That's the thing about Oda as an author as well. He doesn't usually lie to the audience through characters. Like their words are usually his words as well.
Yeah, it's his way of telling us things.
What about the Kaido silhouette we got?
Oh, that was a fucking lie. And the big one silhouette.
Fucking lie. That wasn't even
and
big
then
one.
The original Admiral silhouettes. Do you remember when Kizaru had that banana hat or something?
Yeah, that was funny.
And the warlords that all just looks like Mihawk, just generic swordsmen.
I bet the Holy Knights are the same thing. They're all gonna look nothing like the silhouettes at all. Probably.
Well, maybe when he draws silhouettes, maybe he's drawing silhouettes from the perspective of the person talking about them. So for the Yonko, it was like how Garp imagines. Yeah, it's how Garp sees
like fat
them.
lazy fuck.
I mean, Oda has said that he introduces characters specifically so that he can draw cool silhouettes. So I reckon he thinks of the cool silhouette first, and then he's like, that doesn't really... Nah, scrap that. These are what the characters actually look like. Nothing like that. Cool silhouette, but these are what the characters are, I guess.
But yeah, like, what's your guys' take on the entire, like, this might just be this entire... it's basically confirmed to be a sort of post-apocalyptic setting, One Piece.
A sword off? Or sort of.
Okay.
Sort of.
I thought you said a sword off. Yeah.
A duel?
You're right. It is. And it's happening.
I'm very excited about that.
What happened? I mean, even back to that like ancient city we found on the moon.
Like the spaceships.
Yeah.
And also, I think people keep forgetting that we have like this really interesting timeline also throughout the One Piece story, where there's, of course, if you're a more casual fan... the peasant among One Piece fans.
Manu, none of them would be watching this podcast.
Very true. But yeah, I think most people go like, Void Century was like the oldest we ever go. But for example, I think it's said that Alabasta goes like a whole like 4,000 years before the Void Century.
Tree of Knowledge
right?
is like 5,000
Yeah.
years old.
So there's still a whole lot of like prehistory.
The Age of Heaven, I believe it's said on the poneglyph.
Hey, Manu, one time I remember you said that you wouldn't really be interested if they did like a film about... like a One Piece film about Roger's backstory or like something of Joy Boy's time.
No.
Manu, you're full of shit opinions.
No.
I'm pretty sure it's the exact opposite, because my opinion on One Piece movies is like they literally could make a movie about like Usopp's daily life on the Thousand Sunny, and I think it would be better than Film Red, as long as it's something canon that we can consume, even if it's super trivial.
Okay, because I can't remember what the comparison was, but I'll find the clip for you one time.
I think it might have been that you two were in favor of those stories, as was I, but I was saying that for financial reasons they would never do that.
Maybe it was more in the context of I would rather see this in the actual story than handled in a film. Is like the only
Maybe
way
that
I
was
could
it.
imagine that.
Yeah, I would
I'm
hate for that
definitely
to
not the
happen.
type who's like, oh, no, I don't want to
Because-
see anything.
So,
going
say
on.
they announce One Piece film, Roger. Immediately, it's like, oh my god, this is going to be cool. And then you realize it's going to come out in Japan, like 3 to 6 months before anywhere else gets to see it. And you're going to know all the shit that happens in it before you see it. I would genuinely have to fly to Japan to do something like that.
But it's this entire movie about Roger, but it's kind of not canon. But they sprinkle a lot of canon stuff in there because they want for someone to. Oh my god, my nightmare.
I think that would be more fun, as long as it's actually
think
about
so.
Roger and not like a pop star from 30 years ago who is Roger's abandoned daughter that he left somewhere.
Yeah, not Ace, but Queen. No, what would be good too?
Queen? I'm down with the Roger Queen story.
Roger Queen, nice. Yeah.
Was that his missus before Portia Rouge?
I tried fucking the Brachiosaurus, still no child.
I still can get over that flashback, the Odin flashback, where Roger's just like, I should bang some girls before I die.
That's what he did in One Piece Stampede before they showed that in the manga. There was like a scene with him talking to Ray Lee, and he's like, you know what, Ray Lee? I'm gonna have a son.
Yeah.
Bye.
Wait, no, wasn't that in the manga, in the actual manga? That was
It
in the
was,
actual
but
manga.
it was
was
in
in the manga as
Stampede
well.
before.
Was it in Stampede too? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, that's like, I'm gonna die soon, but you know what? I really haven't done enough. Smash.
Best spread my seed.
Yeah.
That went well, didn't it?
Yeah, I'm very excited. Like, I feel like there's like a very decent chance that we're only gonna get like, I think at least we're gonna get a few bullet points about like pre-Void Century One Piece, but I do hope that it plays overall a bigger role than we might expect quite yet. Because again, like there's like little things like, yeah, we have Joy Boy, but then the Nika thing seems to be like a precursor to Joy Boy.
Older.
Yeah. And I do want to go, I do want to get to the Void Century, but I also want to go older.
Let's keep going back. As far
Yeah.
back as we can.
I'd love to. Do you
Peel
think that
back
it's
the
just
layers.
something that we'll actually explore though, or do you think it's something that's just left there so that, at some point we can still keep getting like tidbits of information every couple of years where we get like a story here and a story
I
there?
feel like that depends, Sophie, whether Oda is everything that's important about the One Piece secret and the treasure and everything is the key to all of that just within the Void Century, or is kind of everything leading up to the Void Century and the world how it was up to that point, is that also, if that's relevant to how the Void Century came about in a major way, then I think we're going to explore that a lot more. If it's kind of like, yeah, there were these things before that, and then at some point the big kingdom came and the other 20 kingdoms, but then that's like all we get, and then that's the main part that's going to define everything. I think it's really going to come down to that.
If that's the case, we could find that out potentially quite soon, especially because we've already been hinted about what the origins of the devil fruits are. And I feel like devil fruits is one of the sort of like core tenets of One Piece and of the One Piece world and One Piece lore, that, so if the devil fruits were actually created by the ancient kingdom, then it could be like, actually, yeah, the world history before that is important, but really the bulk of everything happened during that Void Century era.
Can I ask you, because I'm very curious what you guys thought, like, I think it was the chapter before the current one when we're recording this, where Luffy awakens the robot with his heartbeat. Because like my immediate thought process was, oh, Luffy awakens technology, and then it was kind of like Sun God, Mother Flame is
Solar
technology.
powered.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, soul
Is it like
power,
so?
exactly.
Like my the thought process kind of went to like, oh, are devil fruits just biotechnology or something? Is that where you went as well with your head, or not really?
I didn't get that far.
I did not go there. No, I
Okay.
did not go there either.
My mind was too
but-
filled with robots. But it's a good idea. Because
Yeah, I like that
essentially
idea
they
as well.
are, because the way we've replicated them, they are kind of biotech. currently.
Right?
Especially with how Vegapunk's inserted them into the green blood and everything as well, yeah.
And weaponized it.
And you have the entire Mother Flame thing, and Vegapunk couldn't really replicate it, but then obviously the Void Century was tied to Joy Boy and that fruit and so on and so forth. Sun God. Luffy reactivating that ancient technology, which I thought was interesting because I'm like, how did they resurrect it 200 years ago? Like, did someone have Luffy's someone have Luffy's devil fruit before that?
But they weren't, maybe like they didn't necessarily awaken it. Maybe they were on the cusp and then that person actually died.
Someone was like lifting the arms.
All the way up the red line.
Joy Boy's back.
We're gonna prank the Gorosei.
They would have to mean that someone died. It was like they got to Luffy's point where he, they had a massive fight, and then they were almost about to awaken, and they were like, actually, no.
I didn't even think about that. No, they awakened and actually started to attack the world government, but then failed.
No. It can't have awakened at all because the Gorosei said that the fruit hadn't awakened.
Did they? But I feel like that wasn't.
Or they said that.
clear.
Yeah, because they said that it must be a legend at this point.
I think it was only Zunisha who said she hasn't, like, they haven't heard the heartbeat in 900 years. But they maybe weren't around, right?
Yeah, maybe Zunisha was off elsewhere.
Weren't the Gorosei saying, like, why are we so worried? Like, that fruit hasn't awakened in centuries. That maybe they didn't say 800 years. Maybe they just said centuries. But they were saying, like, it's almost a legend at this point, and it might be a myth.
I mean, we don't know, so maybe there are, like, other ways to, like, activate that ancient technology. But, like, that was kind of at least what Oda wants us to think, right? Like, Luffy awakens this, makes it work. It did awaken 200 years ago, did attack the world government. So I feel like again, it might be a red herring, but like the very like easy answer there would be, oh, someone else had Luffy's devil fruit, awakened the robot, attacked the world government, failed.
Or maybe it's a coincidence. Luffy went into Gear 5th, and then someone switched the robot on at the same time.
Yeah, of course.
Probably not, though, because it's heavily implied because you see the heartbeat there.
I mean, I will totally admit that crossed my mind as well, but I would really hate that. That would be such a cheap.
That would be such a tease, yeah.
It kind of reminds me like when the Gorosei I mean, even then I think people were still thinking it was Luffy's devil fruit because like Luffy was dead, but even then when they were talking about like the Gorosei were talking about that devil fruit, and then it shows Zunisha.
Oh yeah. For what, 1 or 2 weeks it was like the Zunisha fruit theory? Like that was a wild time in the fan base. Oh my god. Zunisha has the ultimate devil fruit, the elephant fruit, the nighttime Norida Zoan, mythical Zoan elephant.
Like what is the model submissive giant elephant?
That was around the same time as the Zunisha as Pluton. That I think that took a lot of popularity.
True.
God, I love stupid One Piece theories. It's one of the best parts of this fan base. It
was also a fun generation. Yeah.
They've only gotten more wild.
Yeah, more wonky, yeah. What do you guys think about I think one thing also that's been like on everyone's mind was the 4-week break was, of course, in case you don't know, and the like people watching, Oda getting eye surgery for, I think it's astigmatism, if I remember correctly.
You do.
And arguably, I feel like, if anything, the art since he's come back has actually been worse. I've seen like people comment on it a lot as well. So I do hope he's okay.
Maybe I'm just an uncultured swine, but I really haven't noticed a difference in the art that's made me go, huh, that's weird. Or like in either direction. I've just been like, oh, this is One Piece.
And you really don't realize until, and I've only kind of realized it until people pulled up older panels of older arcs, like going back to Marineford and stuff and so on and so forth.
Oh, but that was like 50 years ago.
If more.
But back then, how many chapters was he releasing?
Lots.
More.
So it was close to, he only took like 3 or 4 breaks a year back
a week, then. Yeah. Again, like I think people do cherry pick a little bit, but like just...
I saw one of those posts and I studied it and I didn't know what was wrong with it.
Give me a random chapter number before 500.
499.
How'd you get that number, Liam?
I generated it randomly.
Guide me through the thought process.
I was trying to make it 69, but then you said under 500, so I couldn't get a nice 69 going. So then I just went 499.
So here, this is like one manga page from like chapter 499 during Sabaody.
Send us a comparison page as well that's not a scan. Send us like the official one. Also, the official chapters do get a bit tricky because their scans are not great. that they get given from Shueisha.
But also it's because if you're getting this of Viz, don't they upload the one that's been edited once the volume's out?
Yes.
Whereas the week by week tends to be a bit messier. So yeah, we can't compare something like from last week.
The Viz scans are often a bit janky. Like when Luffy grabbed Kizaru, they still like left the crease in the page on the official scans, which is a bit like, And that's not a fault of Viz, by the way. That's what they're given by Shueisha, which I feel like they could really do better on.
And to be fair, I also don't really know how much cleanup they do.
Ooh, I do. Not any, if any, but the French scans, because I've been trying to read some of those every week to learn French, and they do cleanup.
Oh no, sorry, I meant the official is what I meant.
Yeah, so Viz does almost no cleanup, whereas the French official translation does do quite a bit of cleanup, because I compare them side by side now.
The only thing that I get when I Google what chapter 1020 is like a lot of fan art of giant naked Robin.
Why are you Googling it? Why did you pick this specifically? You're comparing St. Charles to tits. This is not fair. And you're saying that Charles is better.
That second one.
Yeah, right. That's very true.
So to anyone who hasn't seen this, Manu has sent us a page from Sabadi of St. Charles going, yeah. And then to compare that with, he sent a photo of Robin doing, what was the attack called? The thing just before she did the Yeah, where she's like completely giant and topless. And Manu's trying to make the argument that the Robin panel is worse.
Exactly, that was exactly what I was saying.
I think the art style has changed. I think it would be better to maybe compare it to something more recent, like Whole Cake or Dressrosa, like something like slightly more modern.
Here's one from the official. From that chapter.
Oh, but that's also an action shot as well.
But also, I've actually just realized, do we now have to compare something post-surgery? Is the whole point to compare post-surgery?
Did you guys not see all those tweets where it was like Kizaru kind of,
yeah, I saw, but that was like zooming in on such a...
Like a small panel as well.
I guess. I mean, to be fair, I think the argument there is that like usually before that in the backgrounds of like even like smaller stuff in the manga didn't used to be kind of like this like very like wiggly rough.
You know, it would be really interesting to figure out where that point happened. If there is like an issue there with the background details.
That would be a whole video, Liam.
Yeah, but it sounds like a lot to research as well.
A lot of research.
It's the sort of thing I would want to hire someone to research, because that's like going through everything.
1,000+ chapters.
I get where you're coming from, and I guess this isn't a you thing, this is a Twitter thing, but I just don't notice.
Me too. I think that's where it comes to. Like, I mean, I love Oda's art style, and I think it's something to be appreciated for what it is, but it's not like, I wouldn't argue that One Piece is the manga with the best art necessarily, so it doesn't bother me that much.
Art's very subjective. But I'm looking at like very recent Egghead chapters at the moment. I'm like, fuck, these are detailed as shit. These are great.
Yeah, he has always so many things going on in the background.
Yeah, but like even the faces in the panels are great as well. Were there multiple panels, or was it just that one shot of Kizaru that people were looking at?
I think there were a bunch like across the last couple of chapters, but as you say, people are very... I mean, to be fair, it does look really bad, but it's probably really heavily zoomed in, like somewhere in the background. But I do get what people are saying. Like, I feel like it used to be cleaner. I mean, we do know again that Oda has been having like eye surgery and stuff like that. So like some issues with this site. But there was like definitely an overall, at least a shift in like art style throughout obviously throughout One Piece history, you could even say.
Mm-hmm.
But also, he gets other artists as well for some sort of the background stuff, doesn't he?
Does he?
I thought he did.
He has to. It's the only way it's possible.
But I don't know if the assistants only do things like building and structures. Like, I don't know what the split is. So it might not necessarily be him.
This is an interview from a long, long time ago. But apparently Oda is the only one allowed to draw Luffy, which I guess implies that assistants can be doing any job that needs doing.
And you would imagine that they're probably doing the backgroundy stuff, which then, you know, it's not really on Oda and his astigmatism. Also, what sort of surgery do you get to fix your astigmatism? Because I have astigmatism and I didn't know you could get surgery for that.
Oh, really?
Oh, here is... I mean, again, I don't know, like the one I'm sending right now, I'm not sure how cherry-picked this is. Like this one compares Kizaru versus Rayleigh versus Kizaru versus Luffy in the latest chapters.
Is that actual Kizaru or is it one of the clones?
I think that's actual Kizaru, if I remember correctly, but I might be wrong.
I think we're getting to the point where this is like serious nitpicking, and I am a nitpicker. I pick the shit out of those knits.
I mean, I see what people are saying, because I guess like the art style has become a little bit more, not even like sketchy is the wrong word, but like you can kind of see like the pen he uses, the ink pen, and the fountain pen he uses for illustrating. Like I personally don't have an issue with it.
Does this also maybe have to do with the switch from traditional to digital? Because doesn't he do
That's
a
what I
lot
was
of
just about to
digital
say
work
as
now?
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sabadi was definitely all hand drawn.
Does he do it digitally though? No,
He definitely does the color
He
spreads
does.
digitally. Most mangaka do it digitally now, and they print them out to do funky things.
Okay, I mean, yeah, again, I just thought it was interesting. I wanted to hear your thoughts on it again. I don't mind per se, because I think the story is way more important.
If it hadn't been pointed out on Twitter, it wouldn't have even crossed my mind.
No,
I've been
very true.
reading this consistently for 16, 17 years or something now.
And it's probably like, again, as you said, if you actually go back and kind of like look throughout the progression of everything, you'll probably see that it's kind of like a creeping change in style, I would assume. But who knows, maybe there is actually like a point where it suddenly changes.
Yeah, maybe there is, and maybe it has to do with Oda's condition. Maybe we're gonna start very slowly going the way of Togashi.
At the end, it's just like
Trees.
Yes, tree. Okay, this is like interesting, because I feel like this is like an interesting mix almost between styles. Again, you would probably have to compare this across.
So the arc between the two ones that you've given us is an interesting mix.
Kind of between. It's leaning more towards Egghead, right? I guess. Whole cake.
What a panel.
Yeah, it's a
What a
sick panel, right?
gloriousome. It's a panel of Soul King Brook.
But even then, I think you could argue that the style feels very different to that one from Saobody.
It does.
Very.
It does.
And you can tell again, like the pen that's used is again looks very different.
Yeah, I feel like it looks
maybe it
different
is that
from
digital.
both, actually, I would argue.
True.
It's kind of like, its own thing again.
But then that's because that's a big panel, right? Like where it has a lot of like impact and gravitas.
Yeah.
Whereas like I think that one of Kizuru probably not as much.
I think we keep an eye on it and see how it goes.
If nothing changes, there's really not much we can do.
And then we'll be like, yep, we kept an eye on it.
And on that note, I'm gonna say a big thank you to Leon Gordon for keeping an eye on us
Leon
and being a member.
Gordon. 2 first names. Very good, sir.
That's more first names than most of us. Thank you
Very true.
for your support. We appreciate it.
Yep, that's it.
Awkward as fuck ending. Who's hosting this one again? Is it yours, Sophie?
Yep.
Come
That's
on.
why it's going so well.
That's why it's so not awkward and smooth.
Give us a smooth ending.
Okay, bye.
Oh, that's a Liam ending. That's no
Boing.
smooth ending. Bye.